your time this afternoon. Just a couple of quick slides from my part. The agenda will be those slides followed by a demo. As Shukri mentioned, we do have a customer joining us this afternoon, and we want to get their experiences as well. We'll wrap up with some final thoughts and the Q&A. So first of all, our customer is joining us today is James Bennett. James is National Underwriting Specialist of Executive Solutions at Trisura. And I want to welcome James, and we'll be back to him in just a couple of minutes. So first of all, what is SortSpoke? Really what you need to know here is that we're a data extraction tool. It's a cloud-based tool that your team will use to boost productivity, reduce risk, and improve turnaround times when they are extracting data from the documents that they're processing on a daily basis. The problem we're solving here is data extraction. And as we all know, there's a lot of jobs in the insurance business, not the least of which is your underwriters who are handling your surety and specialty lines business incoming submissions. Part of their job entails data extraction. The problem with it, it's expensive work. It takes time away from doing the actual underwriting task. And of course, we all make mistakes when we're typing. We do a broad range of work in the insurance business, and I just want to outline a couple of them here. In addition to what we help surety and specialty lines carriers, we also work in the life insurance side of things and in other P&C solutions, including commercial applications. And we also have carriers who use us in the claims area. If you're familiar with data extraction tools, I want to focus here just for a second and explain how SortSpoke is different. Number one, there's a human in the loop, or what we refer to as human in the loop. This is a productivity tool. It's designed to be used by your subject matter experts. In this case, your underwriters. Second, no templates to set up, no pre-programming to do. SortSpoke is a continuous learning model, and it starts from nothing, and your subject matter experts will train it over time, and it continues to learn with every interaction that it has between that subject matter expert, and it does not stop learning. Number three, you're going to be up and running in a matter of hours, not days, not months. You can literally start uploading documents and have SortSpoke's machine learning kick in and provide you with quality extracted data in hours. The other point I want to make here is that because there's a human in the loop, you are guaranteed of a better regulatory compliance outcome. In other words, not only are you going to have every document in every field with unique identifiers, but you're going to be able to identify who processed it, at what time it was processed. And by doing that, you are effectively reduce the risk of your operation of creating any mistakes. The process is really very simple. You choose any document. So you can choose structured documents like certificates or forms, but the system works exceptionally well with unstructured documents, things like leases or contracts. There's no templates to set up, as I mentioned, and literally you just let SortSpoke do the work. Our workflow involves uploading documents to SortSpoke. You can upload, as I mentioned, any type of document in any language. Your team will review the suggestions that SortSpoke has made once it's gotten some degree of training. And then finally, you'll get back an extracted data file, which will be available to you to do whatever you need to do with it. It could be just populate a spreadsheet or send directly to an automated underwriting engine. So I'm going to pass the presentation over to Brandon Robinson, our Director of Customer Success, for the demo.
Thanks, Craig. Good afternoon or good morning, everybody. Just going to switch over to my demo here. As Craig said, SortSpoke is a unique application in that it's cloud-based. It's ready for you to start using right away. There's no long, complex implementation project. You can literally get SortSpoke up and running in a couple of days or even in hours, depending on the situation. And the way that it works is, as Craig said, you upload documents to SortSpoke, and out of the box, it doesn't know anything about any particular kind of document or any particular kind of use case. You're going to put your subject matter experts into the mix. They're going to work with SortSpoke to get it trained, to get it set up, and then in a couple of hours, typically, and you know, James may touch on this a little bit in his chat in a little bit, that we literally just sit in a room with folks and we have the the subject matter experts for the particular kinds of documents sit down and actually set up the fields of information. So I'll give you a quick tour of how that looks. What we're looking at here is just a pretty standard bond application from a surety use case. And this is SortSpoke in flight. This is a document that's been trained up, or a category or type of document that's been trained up a little bit. And we're at that place now where SortSpoke is starting to provide suggested values to the users. So instead of coming in cold and there's nothing here, SortSpoke is now making suggestions to the underwriter or the admin assistant or whomever might be working on the document to extract the data. And your job is now to go through and do a quality control and check the suggestions that SortSpoke is making. And then as you move through different varieties, even if the documents look different, you know, they use different words to describe the same thing, SortSpoke helps you figure all that out as you show with those examples, as Craig said. You kind of get started from a place of no learning to a place of lots of learning in a very rapid period of time. And even if the variation on these documents is extreme, if you have thousands of brokers sending you in thousands of different types of documents, generally speaking, within 200 or 300 documents in the most complex examples, you start to get a really high degree of productivity uplift for your team that's processing these documents as a result of using SortSpoke. This is what it looks like when you've actually just gotten started. So I've just gone ahead and created a new type of category today, or document type, called specialty applications. I tagged my very first document and I just left it sitting here. And you can see that I've just highlighted the values and I haven't done anything with it. How SortSpoke works is you do that for each field. You create your fields, you actually select the values, whether they're single values, whether they're things like checkboxes or things like tabular data, which I'll get to in just a sec. You finish all the fields that you wish to extract data from, and you press this big accept document button. And every time you do that, a couple of things happen. You get the data directly out of SortSpoke from that specific document that you were just working on. And as Craig says, you can get that in a couple of different ways. But that's also how you start to train the system. And in a situation like this, where I've literally just started, it's still going to be incumbent on me as a user to actually go through and find the data that I'm looking for. So I'm actually going to be pulling out the information that I want from this particular document by highlighting it with my cursor. And this is all the users have to do to get it started. They actually just have to use their cursor to extract the information from the document just by highlighting it. And then as you continue to do that, as you show it more and more documents, SortSpoke gets to that place where we are up here, that it's actually starting to make the suggestions for you as you load subsequent documents. Our typical experience for how many documents you require to get to a place where you start to get suggestions, really depends on the complexity of the use case. You might start seeing suggestions as early as the first 10 or 20 documents, but you're going to start to get a high degree of confidence in terms of what the long-term performance of the system is going to be, somewhere closer to 100 or 200 documents when there's a lot of document variation, like there might be in these application forms. I mentioned tabular data a minute ago. If you're processing financial statements as part of the review of a particular new business application or a renewal, there's lots of stuff that you're probably looking for from these. And a couple of different ways exist using SortSpoke to pull data out. If you're looking for single fields from the most recent year, and this is one of the approaches actually that our friends at Trisura use, is you hunt and you find a couple of key values, whether it's 10 fields, 15 fields, 20 fields of very specific data from the financial statement to help you then populate the underwriting model. Alternatively, you can also take out an entire table using SortSpoke, and SortSpoke actually allows you to draw a table in a couple of clicks and then extract the data from that table in literally just seconds. And then again, like any other part of SortSpoke, it's going to be a guided approach where the user is actually going to have the final say on the quality and the accuracy of the data. And then it's going to be very quick for you to extract that information, to send it downstream to use for your underwriting purposes, whether it's, or if it's a claims use case, you can take the data out of here and send it to where you need to in just a few clicks. So I'll just recap, SortSpoke is out of the box. It's going to be trained by you guys. It's trained by your team on your documents. There is no pre-training, there is no complex setup other than creating these field names that you see over here on the right-hand side on a document by document type basis. You start to load your documents. SortSpoke helps you figure out what type or classification each document is very quickly as well. And then you'll actually go through that process where you start a new document type, you're capturing the fields of information using your cursor, and then as you accept more and more documents, you get to the place where SortSpoke starts to provide those suggestions, and you do that guided review. So the user's time is actually focused on the quality of the data or the accuracy of the data that they're pulling out, and they're no longer relying on their manual data entry skills typing this. where there's the opportunity for error, and generally getting a pretty significant productivity uplift. With that, I'm going to pass it back to Craig, and we'll talk to you a little bit more about some of the results that we've seen as we've actually worked with customers in this space. Craig?
Thanks, Brendan. Yeah, on the results side, here's some masked results from a Surety and specialty lines insurance carrier who's using the tool to extract data from financial statements, very similar to the process that Brandon was just outlining to you. The obvious uplift here is productivity. So when it took the underwriters 5 minutes to do the work manually, with SortSpoke, it now takes them less than a minute. So you've got a 5-time productivity uplift there. But what's more important almost is the capacity increase that team has now got. And it's interesting when you have that conversation about the opportunities that presents itself with. That extra capacity allows them to, in some cases, extract more data for analytics purposes. In other cases, it enables them to process more business, to generate more revenue. And there's even further benefits that derive from this. One of our customers, for example, decided that they didn't want the underwriters to continue to do this work, and they wanted to push the work down to the underwriting assistants. So the underwriting assistants are now doing the full data extraction work and handing off those files to the underwriters to focus on the underwriting. The other part I'll mention here is that the system is very, very flexible. You can absorb new documents on the fly or changes to existing documents. You don't need to call us, you don't need to call IT. The user is the one who processes those new documents and adds them to the model that's already been built. So SortSpoke is very adaptable that way and learns very quickly to process those new documents, even though it's never seen it before. So I think it's an appropriate time to introduce you to James Bennett. As I mentioned, James is the National Underwriting Specialist responsible for executive solutions at Trisura. And I think what I'd really like to do is just turn the presentation over to James for his commentary and give you a little bit of an understanding for his experience using SortSpoke.
Great, thanks, Craig. Yeah, so we did a proof of concept a little while ago and then implemented the use of SortSpoke within our system and our, I guess, day-to-day underwriting. We have about 12 to 14 underwriters working on this on a day-to-day basis. And we use this right now solely to extract the data for financial statements. So we capture a fair number of fields. And what we've noticed is that this can obviously take a considerable amount of time for underwriters to review the financial statements that they receive on a new submission and then enter it into our underwriting system manually. This typically takes anywhere from 3 to 8 minutes and sometimes a little longer depending on the complexity of the statements. So when running through this with SortSpoke, we've been able to cut this down to 45 seconds up to 120 seconds, give or take, just be with the system. And that would also include, as Brandon showed in the demonstration, of highlighting or correcting some of the values as SortSpoke continues to learn. And through that learning process, actually, SortSpoke, it didn't really take very long since we were only sticking with one fairly static type of document being a financial statement. The fields are generally, that we're capturing are generally the same. And it only took about 25 to 50 documents, I recall, in the proof of concept to get up to speed and be working fairly efficiently. And then it's only gotten better over time since then as we've onboarded additional users and therefore additional documents on a continuous basis. The other benefit is this SortSpoke was able to plug directly into our system so that we only had to go add the document to SortSpoke, which would produce a file that could be easily read by our underwriting system and fully populate the values. And then another item that we noticed that was a huge benefit to us was that it could load multiple documents at a time into the system. So if an underwriter were to receive a few submissions over the course of the morning and there were a number of different financial statements, they could put all of those financial statements into SortSpoke and get that process started right away and then prioritize their day accordingly. and then we also noticed that there was actually a lot less human error, and the underwriters were able to catch, when we were doing the proof of concept, the underwriters were able to review previous accounts where we had used the similar data and noticed that SortSpoke was able to catch any, manual typing errors that were entered into the system incorrectly. So if an underwriter saving about 5 minutes on average per submission, and over a dozen or so underwriters doing that in a day, that adds up pretty quickly to kind of time value add for their day. So they're able to expand out and do more marketing, be a little bit more in-depth on their underwrite, and just add time overall, which is something that everybody seems to be losing these days. And finally, I guess my last comment on it, putting this into the workflow was actually pretty seamless. Since it's such an easy drag and drop function, implementing this into SortSpoke, it was almost just overnight that underwriters were able to adapt without any major questions or issues with their current workflow. I think that's about it that I can say. If anybody does have any questions, or did you want to add anything, Craig or Brendan?
That's James. Really appreciate that. I think what we'll do is we'll hold the questions for a couple minutes. We just appreciate your involvement and your account of your experiences. So thank you.
Thanks.
Just a couple more slides here. The first one here is, how do you work with us? It's really simple. We don't expect you to believe any of this. In all honesty, we want you to try it. So book a discovery call with us. You can do a POC. It's no charge to you. POCs last anywhere from a couple of days to a couple of weeks, depending on your resource availability. We will train your people, provide them with an account, use your documentation, and then provide you with a report at the end of the day, which helps you understand the metrics which are key to building your business case. Where else do we help? We do a lot of work not only in the insurance space, but with banks and lenders, as well as professional services, so audit, accounting, and tax, real estate, etc. And I just want to mention a couple other things. One is, I touched on the analytics teams. We help that angle of the business as well, because we can uncover data that was previously not economically viable to extract. And finally, we have integrations with a couple of our PA vendors, being UiPath and Pega. Final thought for you. We believe that your operational purposes, as far as your operational processes, are concerned, that your human experts are your greatest asset. That should be for your entire business, but clearly that is something that nobody's going to disagree with. What we help with is we put easy and powerful AI machine learning in the hands of your business users and give them control over how they work and what work they do. So I'm going to turn it over to Surety for the Q&A.
So we have a few questions this afternoon. The first question is, can you handle images that are not scanned?
Yeah, good question, Surety. Typically, we get this question like if a PDF might come in from a scanner or a fax machine, is it TIFF or something? Can it just get sent into SortSpoke? The answer is yes. If there's a document that doesn't have readable text on it yet, that's machine-generated text, we'll just take care of that on the way in the door as part of the pre-process, and then start to do the SortSpoke work on top of that.
Next question is SortSpoke deployed on the cloud or on-premise?
Yeah, another good question. So SortSpoke is a cloud-based solution. We have data centers in Canada and the US for our cloud deployments. We don't kind of envision it as an on-premise solution. The hardware that's required for it from the cloud is very convenient. But we're happy to have discussions with customers if there's a specific requirement to see what kind of the options are. But we typically do expect it to stay in the cloud.
The next question is the learning shared between customers, or is it unique to each customer?
Yeah, I'm happy to take that one, Shukri. The answer is absolutely no. There is no sharing of learning between customers. When you start a new use case. You are building a model specifically for you and that use case. It will never be shared with any of your other use cases or any other customer, period.
And the final question is, how do you get documents into SortSpoke?
Oh yeah, there's a bunch of different ways. Kind of just breeze through that today. You can import them directly via the web, which is what we typically do for things like a proof of concept or a small test. But when you start to get to scale, there's the opportunity to send the documents in via a cloud storage provider. Actually, our friends at Trisura do that with OneDrive for Business. They drop files into a folder location, and it gets ingested automatically into SortSpoke from there. You can also use our RESTful web API at higher volumes to send documents in and receive the response back, the structured data files back from SortSpoke. And you can also, as Craig mentioned, do some work with some of our integrated tech platforms that today include UiPath and Pegasystems. Typically, though, just to get started, just use the web interface, upload some documents, test it out, and then we can work with you to kind of find the best approach for you guys to scale it out over time.
And that brings us to the end of our Q&A portion of the webinar. The webinar today was recorded, so we will be sending you guys a link to the recording. Thank you again for joining us. And if you have any questions, please feel free to contact us at sales@sortspoke.com. And watch out for our next webinar. Have a great day, everybody.